Hi, welcome back to my 2004 XK8. In this video I wanted to talk a bit about the optional extras that you can get for the XK8, really to give an overview of which ones I think are worth having. So if you're sort of in the market for an XK8, this video might be handy. If you're sort of looking at cars for sale and wondering whether certain things that they're advertised with are actually worth it day to day. Or if you're just interested in knowing what things you could get for an XK8 if you've got one already. Now, this car being a 2004, so getting on towards the later part of production, probably has some things that were optional on the earlier cars, but standard on the later cars. Now, I don't profess to know everything there is to know about this sort of stuff. All I know is that I've kind of made a list of the things I think are optional in this car. But yeah, I might be wrong, so please comment on anything that I've missed out, or you think is an essential optional extra but I've kind of poo-pooed it as just a nice to have or a waste of money. So there are some optional extras on this car, but there are lots of ones which I don't have, so I'll try and go through those ones as well. I mean, I don't have any experience of actually having them, so I can't say if they're essential or not, but I can talk about why I think that, whether they would be good or whether they'd be potentially a waste of money. So I'm going to find a place to pull over, and I'll go through all of the ones that I know about. Right, so just pulled over and tried to think about some of the optional extras on the exterior of the car. The first thing that you kind of notice about the XK8 is that it has quite big wheels for the time. Mine is fitted with 19-inch Atlas alloy wheels, and I think these were an optional extra because I think the original spec would have had 18-inch, so the 19-inch being an inch bigger. And I think the bigger the better on these cars, and I think the 20-inch optional extras are probably the best looking. That's just my opinion. People might not like the big wheel look, but certainly sort of the XKRs came, I think the XKRs came with 19, and again optional extras for 20-inch depending on the year. But what was offered at the time, which is something which I don't have on my car obviously because I don't have 20-inch wheels, was this package called the R Performance package. I don't know if that was available for my year of car. I think it was, but it's certainly available for the later models, so the ones from like late 2004, 2005. And what that comprised of was bigger 20-inch wheels, I think the BBS Montreal type, which are actually my favourite type of wheel on the XK8. And it came with brembo brakes, so you might have seen on some of the XK8s, XKRs have these really nice sort of silver calipers with the R logo on them, so they're made by Brembo, so give an enhanced braking performance. And also I think it came with the CATS electronically controlled dampers. So the CATS dampers are for when you're having more spirited driving. I think the damping makes the car slightly stiffer in corners and that kind of thing. So my personal opinion on alloy wheels is it's kind of a bit of a personal taste kind of thing, but in terms of the our performance package, I don't have it and wish I did have it, for the better looking and better performing brakes, as well as the sort of advanced suspension stuff. I do know that people sort of say that with the sort of sportier suspension and the 20-inch wheels that the ride isn't quite as good, but I think the difference would be so marginal that I think for the looks alone, I think the package is probably worth it. And actually the BBS Montreal wheels are hideously expensive to try and buy second hand, so even if you don't like the look of those 20-inch wheels, then if you see a car with it on but you think, oh, I'm not sure about the wheels, then just get it anyway and flog the wheels for a fortune and buy some like smaller ones. So it's totally worth having that, I think. So the next thing about this particular car is that it has reversing sensors. So along the back of the bumper there are these sort of like 4 sort of sensor round things. They do look a bit unsightly, but on a car this length I find that the rear parking sensors are really handy. You don't have them on the front, which is a bit of a letdown because it has a long bonnet and sort of slopes away from you, so it's quite hard to judge where the front of the car is. But you can kind of put your headlights on and you can kind of see, you know, how close you are to something by the reflection or something like that. But the rear ones, the visibility out the back isn't great because the boot sort of tapers down, so you can't see the end of the boot either. So having the reversing sensors is a really handy thing to have. So I recommend having that if you can get them. The next thing on the exterior of the car is the types of headlamps that you might be able to get. So again, this is for later cars only. I think the XK8s came with them as standard, but the XK8s were an optional extra, and that is the high intensity discharge headlamps, or xenon headlamps, whatever you want to call them, and they can be identified by having a black sort of reflector inside the headlamp unit itself, rather than a sort of reflective chrome one like I've got. So I've got the standard headlamps, but there were sort of HID xenon type ones that you could get. If you're unsure by the exterior of a car, it should be quite easy to see it anyway, because it will either be like a dark headlamp or it will be a really sort of chrome looking headlamp like I've got for the standard lamps. But if you go inside the car, you'll see that the headlamp level adjustment, so how high the headlamps are, is there for the standard lamps, but it's not there for the HID or xenon lamps because they are self-adjusting. So that's one way to tell from photos of an ad if it's not clear from the outside. And the last thing on the outside, which I think is worth talking about, is the headlamp wash. So I don't know if I've got that or not. Please put in the comments if you can tell if you've got it or not, because it's got, for all XK8s, you've got the little sort of cutout, little half moon cutout on the bottom of the headlight, but without sort of standing in front of the car and having someone push the headlamp squirty thing, I don't know if it's actually cleaning them or not. I have no idea. So if anyone knows how to activate that at a standstill, then do let me know, because it might even be that you have to be moving for it to come out. But the chances are it's an optional extra and I don't have it, but I might do, and it's like an Easter egg that I haven't found yet, so let me know. Oh, actually, the other thing about the outside is the power fold mirrors. So the mirrors on some XK8s fold in electrically. Now I do use this because I park my car occasionally on the road outside my house rather than on a driveway, and it's kind of peace of mind that people aren't going to knock your mirrors off. But whether they have to be electrically adjustable, I think you can kind of take it or leave it. I mean, it's just another thing to break, really, because if someone does bash into your mirror, if you've got the manual fold ones where you just push the mirror in, then the likelihood is that it's just going to fold in if someone hits it the right way, and then it's not going to cause any damage. But the electronically adjustable ones, if someone whacks it, it might damage the motor or something like that, and there's something else to wear out over time. So, I mean, I like the fact I can just press a button and the mirrors are folded in and out, but to be honest, it's not really worth having that, so I wouldn't worry about having that one. Okay, so inside the car is where you'd find the majority of the optional extras that you can have for these vehicles. The first one that I'm going to talk about is the cruise control, but also active cruise control and forward alert. So in a car like this, a Grand Tourer, I find it quite astonishing actually that cruise control was an optional extra in 1996 when these cars were made available, and not all XK8s have it. I think this is a really important optional extra, because when you're doing your grand tours, what this car's designed for, and you're on the motorway, then it makes cruising that much more effortless if you can just hold the speed without having to you know, do it all manually. So I think cruise control, I'd aim to find cruise control on an XK8 that you're thinking of purchasing, simply because you'll use it when you take it on long journeys, and it's also that peace of mind that other people who might want to sort of buy into the GT lifestyle would be looking for the similar sort of thing. So I would definitely try and get a car with cruise control. Later cars like mine, some of them came with active cruise control. So for those of you who don't know, what it is that it senses the speed and position of the car in front, and will adjust, when you're in cruise control, will adjust your speed so that you maintain a safe distance from it, and will speed up and slow down depending on sort of traffic conditions. It won't come to a complete stop. It kind of beeps at you saying that you have to sort of intervene and put your foot on the brake, but for just normal motorway driving, I think this is really, really handy, and if you can get it, I think it is worth it. Over and above the normal cruise control, you may or may not like having this sort of computerized control over, you know, stopping and starting. It does feel a bit weird, but I think it's really great. And actually, when I took it to the Peak District when I first got the car, it just made that journey so much more effortless, and yeah, highly recommend having that. The thing that comes with the active cruise control, I think, is this thing called forward alert. The button for it kind of looks like, well, I thought it was a garage door opener when I first got the car, but it's actually a setting that it uses the same hardware as the active cruise control, so it senses sort of where the car is in front, but rather than controlling your speed, it just tells you when you're when the car in front's like slowed down suddenly, or you're going too fast, sort of catching it up with it. It will kind of like beep at you saying, so, you know, slow down, or put your foot on the brake. It says drive, intervene, or something like that. It kind of goes bong, which is actually really good. I mean, I turned it off because I thought it was something different, and I've not really turned it on until the other day. And around town it's a bit overkill, but if you're just driving on, say, A roads and things, and you don't really want to use cruise control, if you have the forward alert on, it can alert you to something that potentially you weren't quite prepared for. So someone's slowing down, if they've got like broken brake lights or something, you'll get alerted before you realise that they're slowing down or something like that. So it's a kind of a safety feature. It comes, I think it comes with the active cruise control. I'm not certain on that, but it uses the same sort of hardware there, so it makes sense for it to come with it. And again, with the active cruise control, it's probably like a personal preference thing, whether you want to be sort of dictated to by the car, like when to, like how far you should be from the car in front. You can change the distances and things, but yeah, I mean, I like it, but it's a personal choice on that one, I think. The next thing, and I guess this is kind of to do with cruise control, and I don't have it. It would have been a button next to the sport button on the gear selector, and that is the automatic speed limiter. I had this on a previous car and I never ever used it, and I didn't miss it. So what that does is that you can, I think, I mean, again, I don't know how it works on the Jaguar, but for the car I had previously, you'd set a speed which is your maximum speed, say 40 miles an hour, and then if you like try to drive over 40 miles an hour, it would stop the engine revving past a certain limit to make sure you didn't go past a certain speed. And the only times I used it in my previous car were by accident, and then you'd get up to a speed and it'd be like hitting a brick wall. It'd be very sort of embarrassing if you've got people in the car. So unless you've got like ridiculously high paranoia about going over the speed limit, then I think you can take it or leave that. I think the cruise control is probably, you know, just plain cruise control is better. You don't need that automatic speed limiter. But again, that's my opinion. You know, people might really insist on having this. They think it's you know, a godsend to have it. But for me, I don't really care too much for that one. The next one is the premium sound system. So in the Jaguar, the sound system did change over the years. I've got the later unit, being a 2004 car, and it's quite dated anyway. So you get a tape deck up front, and the optional, again, this isn't with the well, it might have come with the premium sound system anyway, but I think most XK8s had the option of having a CD auto changer in the boot. So unless you've got loads of cassettes, then you probably would want to have a CD changer. But even CDs these days, people don't tend to have them. They have them on their, like, you know, their phones or their iPods or whatever. So it might not be something that you're particularly fussed about. And certainly what I use is just a third-party radio broadcaster thingy, so it just sends out on a certain frequency, and you just tune your radio into it. So I can play my music on my phone out of the car speakers, or you can get those cassettes that have like a 3.5mm jack that come out of them that people work. So maybe the CD auto changer isn't necessary, and because it doesn't play things like MP3 CDs or anything, so it's only plain old CDs that you can put in there. So it's kind of a take it or leave it perhaps. But the premium sound system isn't about the CD auto changer. What it's about is the quality of and number of the speakers. So the system that I've got is I think it's the premium sound system with the Alpine speakers. I think earlier XK8s came with Harman Kardon or something like that, which again is like a premium audio brand. And what it means is that I think there's 9 speakers and a sub, whereas I think the standard XK8 gets just 7 speakers. So I don't know what the normal XK8 sounds like, but the sound system in here is adequate. I mean, by modern standards, it's not amazing, and over time, you know, speakers degrade and that sort of stuff. But I quite like the sound system in here. It's loud enough. It's got the sub, so it kind of has all the bassy sort of tones and things, and nice sort of high frequency speakers on the dashboard and things. So I think it sounds pretty good. So if you can find it and you're into music, then great. If you're not, then again, it's a personal choice. The next thing is the memory seats. So I, in my previous car, had electric seats, but I didn't have the memory option. And at the time, my wife and I sort of alternated driving it quite a lot, and she's a fair bit smaller than me, so we'd be always adjusting the seat. And in our family car, it's manual adjustment, and it's an absolute well, it's not, I would say a nightmare, but it's really inconvenient that if we swap driving or whatever, I have to sort of raise the seat and put it back and everything, or lower the seat rather and put it back, and she has to do the same, raise the seat and move it forward. So I kind of wanted a car that had the memory function, but she's never driven this, so it doesn't really matter in this car. But I mean, the seats are very sort of comfortable and electrically adjustable in standard form anyway, and the option is just to have that memory function with it. So if you have people who you're sort of sharing the car with, whether it's your partner or a friend or something, and they have their seats up like drastically different to you, then the memory function is worth it. But if you're the only person using the car, then you don't really need to have the memory function. Now, the next thing, again, is a sort of personal preference, but I quite like it, is, and I'm not sure if it came with the memory seats or not, is the heated seats option. So having heated seats, I find on long journeys really handy, because it kind of, if you end up getting a bit of like of a sore back or something, putting heated seats on sometimes can really help that and make the journey a lot more comfortable. So I don't know if you can get heated seats on their own, or if it came with the memory option for the seats, but I quite like that. And again, yeah, I mean, if it came with the memory seats and you've got multiple people using the car, then that's worth having. And the other thing to mention as well, along with sort of memory seats and that kind of stuff, is the steering wheel adjustment. So some cars had a manual adjusted steering wheel for sort of rake and reach or whatever it is, but this one's got like a weird electronic toggle that you electrically adjust it for yourself, and I think that position of the steering wheel is saved on your seat memory preset. So if you're changing over with somebody else and they put it on their setting, I think the steering wheel will move into their preferred position as well. The interesting thing about the electronically adjustable steering column is if it's got the tilt away function as well. I don't know if this is a separate option or extra or part of the electrically adjustable steering column. So tilt away function is basically to make getting in and out of the car a bit easier. I don't know if they think that the XK8 was sort of aimed at an older audience, but what it does is that when you take the key out of the ignition, the steering wheel will go to the furthermost and uppermost position, sort of away from you, so that it gives you more room to get out of the car. I mean, I don't find that my steering wheel position is that far off of that position anyway, because there isn't actually a whole load of like adjustment upwards that you can do on this car, so it doesn't really make a lot of difference, and I can get in and out pretty easily anyway. So if you have the steering wheel like close to your chest and quite low down, and you can't get out very easily, then the tilt away thing might be, you know, a must have, but it's more of just a gimmick really. I think it's not really something you need. The next one is something I don't have, and it is probably useless in today's sort of technological world, and that was the Jaguar phone. And the Jaguar phone would sit in a cradle in the armrest, I believe, and you've got integrated phone controls on your stereo anyway, and on the steering wheel. So from the point of view that I've got these buttons that have telephones on them and I don't have a telephone, I wish I had it. And also for a bit of sort of retro technology, I wish I had the Jaguar phone in here. But in terms of like using it practically, then you just wouldn't use it. People would phone your mobile and you'd probably have some sort of like hands-free thing in here. People wouldn't want to necessarily know, people wouldn't necessarily know to dial your XK8 unless you were like a, you know, traveling salesman or something like that. And actually the actual handset and stuff is a bit dated, and it's kind of like I think it was wired as well. I mean, I'm not exactly sure, but you can't use your phone like that anymore. It's against the law. You can't pick it up on a wire and like you know, speak on the phone like that. I mean, it must have had some sort of hands-free function. I can't believe they would have not had a hands-free function, but yeah, I think it's a total waste of money to opt for a car with the Jaguar phone these days if it was more expensive than one equivalent car which didn't have it. I mean, it's yeah, waste of money, don't bother. But unless you're into your retro tech big time, and then maybe it's an essential thing to have. So talking of retro tech, I think the last one to talk about in here, and something I have and maybe wish I didn't, is the sat-nav. So the sat-nav system is ancient. It's a very sort of, well, I wouldn't say like super early, because there were some like terrible ones in the 90s that you could get, but this is early 2000s, this system, and it's pixelated, it's slow, it doesn't have up-to-date maps, so it doesn't really work. But I am a bit of a geek, and having a screen on the dashboard is kind of a bit James Bond cool for me, and I do like having all like buttons to press and that kind of stuff. But saying that, I also really like the triple gauges that the standard car has, and I think having the triple gauges there has more sort of timeless appeal, because where now this sat-nav is dated, it looks old-fashioned, those sort of pseudo analog gauges, even though they're sort of digitally controlled, will never, you know, go out of fashion. There's a sort of consistency with the main dials, with those three in the middle there, and I think given the choice, I probably would have preferred the three gauges over the sat-nav. But now I have the sat-nav, I do quite like it, and the clock is, you know, it's quite big and easy to see while you're driving, and I have used the sat-nav every now and again, and it has worked. I mean, it's, you know, it's not gone wrong. I mean, the roads have changed, but it's not like they, you know, dug up the M25 and moved it somewhere else. It's still, the main roads are still there, and so if you're in a bind, you can kind of still use the sat-nav. Yeah, it's a kind of personal preference thing, but it's only going to become more useless as time goes on, and it's another thing to go wrong with the car. So it's probably not worth going for a car with sat-nav. And you know, you have sat-nav on your phone now, and you have like dedicated units that you can put on your windscreen or whatever. So it's, you know, if you're sort of hardcore into your satellite navigation, then you don't want to have the sat-nav in here, because it won't work for some journeys, and it's not the greatest sat-nav anyway. It's a bit sort of clunky to use and things. So yeah, actually one of the things I was thinking of doing with this car is replacing that middle panel with the 3 gauges, because you can get a kit to plug it into the wiring harness for a sat-nav car and revert to the sort of standard look. But the problem is that these wood fascias are sort of hand-picked to match when the car came out, so you can't just get the middle one because it won't match the rest of the dashboard. You have to replace pretty much all of the wood panels in the car to get a consistent looking set, and I haven't taken the plunge on doing that yet, because I quite like the colour of this wood. I mean, people like the walnut the best, but I quite like the colour of this one. I think it suits the colour of the car on the outside and the interior. And the only other one I quite like is the black dash. That came on the earlier sport model of the car, and I think you could still get it in these years, but it was not a popular option. People mainly went for the walnut, and the carbon dash that was also available, but it was very contemporary for the time, and I think it suits the XKR more than the XK8. I think it was more, if you wanted sort of more of a racy type of look, then I think the carbon dash was the one to have at the time. But as these cars get older, I like the fact that this has sort of old school wood inside. I think that's part of the appeal. So I think that's all of the extras that I can think of. Oh, the other thing is a heated front screen. Again, I don't know if this is if this is an optional extra on this particular year, but I don't think it was available from the very beginning of production. So heated front screen is really handy because it defrosts the front very quickly. But what I would say about the XK8 is it has a, for the time, it was quite a sophisticated warm-up procedure for the engine. So the car warms up very quickly, presumably to warm up oil and that sort of thing to prevent, damage over time and to sort of prolong the longevity of the mechanical parts and things. But the car warms up very quickly, and actually from turning on the car to getting hot air out of the vents isn't a very long time at all. So you can defrost your car without a heated front screen relatively easily. But the thing I like about the heated front screen is that it's even quicker than that. So you get your windscreen for where you're actually sitting. It's not the whole screen, because there's elements inside the glass that only go to a certain part of the screen, but it does make that defrosting a lot quicker. And I probably wouldn't stop me from buying a car, but it's definitely a plus to have it. It's not a waste of money, I don't think. I think it's a good thing to have. I think that's it. Can't think of anything else. Hopefully this video's been useful for people, and if they're buying an XK8, they've probably got a bit more of an idea of like whether things are helpful to have or essential, or if you've seen a car and you're like, oh, I was going to buy that car with a Jaguar phone for £1,000 more than the others. Well, now you've changed your mind, and that means I've succeeded. But yeah, I think that's it. Thanks for watching, and hopefully catch you again soon with another Jaguar video.